I always liked going to the zoo. I really enjoy seeing the animals and seeing the recreations of their habitats, but on this recent trip many questions arose, such as: how do they get the animals from the zoos? Do zoos have any real use? What is it and how does it affect animal trafficking? Do animals have the necessary conditions to live comfortably in zoos? So I decided to start researching to answer these questions. It all starts in ancient times, where exotic animals were considered gifts of high value among royalty and the bourgeoisie, so people took animals out of their natural habitats to be able to give them away later. In the 19th century, the first zoos were founded. At that time the animals were obtained based on the purchase of specific farms or the illegal purchase of animals taken from their habitats. Since the 1960s the zoos stopped acquiring animals from third parties since they could maintain their numbers of animals by raising them themselves in the zoo, rescuing abused animals or rescuing animals with some physical defect. Unfortunately, this did not stop dealing with animals, but I did reduce it a bit. Animal trafficking is the act of removing an animal from its natural habitat and selling it through unregulated markets. Animal trafficking is a danger since the animals they take were raised in a wild environment, and this means that when they suddenly become captive, the animals become stressed, become more aggressive, and can even cause the death of said animal. In addition to that, animal trafficking affects the ecosystem on even the species in that part. What I mean by this is that they can take out an animal whose role in the ecosystem is to hunt pests so that there is no overpopulation. But if you take it out of its habitat, the pests are not going to have any type of predator. They could reproduce without limits, and there would be no one lowering the population, and this would create an overpopulation of a species. But this can also be the other way around, since they can take out an animal that is the food of another, and if that animal runs out of food, the population would begin to drop and could become at risk. Good thing is that the authorities are putting more and more effort into arresting people who do this horrendous practice. The oldest zoo in the world is located in Schönbrunn, Vienna, and was established in 1752. Originally, zoos were mere centers designed to expose exotic animals to the public. They were commonly called menageries or menageries, and they did not fulfill any other function than to show people animals from distant habitats and very different from the place where they had been transferred. However, and despite the fact that there are still zoos that continue to exist as before, many others have spent years carrying out tasks of conservation and recovery of species. They are research centers whose function is to ensure the survival of threatened species and which also carry out conservation programs in the natural habitats of many animals. And it is that when one thinks of paying a visit to the zoo, perhaps it is good to know beforehand if it is a center that acts in pursuit of the conservation of biodiversity or a mere exhibitor of exotic animals. Some of its uses can be the preservation of endangered species. Zoos maintain the population of animals that are highly hunted or whose reproduction levels are very low. Educational enrichment. Zoos are a great tool to learn about all the animals that are there, as well as their diets, their type of habitat or their behaviors. Animal rescue and reintegration. Some zoos have sanctuaries that are used to rehabilitate wild animals that have become sick or injured and reintegrate them back into the wild. Species research. Zoos are dedicated to researching the animals that live within their facilities. Contrary to what people think, zoos have the right conditions to keep animals happy and healthy because they mimic the conditions of their natural habitats and give them the food they are supposed to eat in their wild state. Zoos have good and bad things, but in my opinion, the advantages they bring are greater than their disadvantages. That is why I think we should continue supporting zoos in their hard work of preserving, studying and caring for all species of animals.